What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Phil Perry, as always, alongside. Anything with Phil is made better by Phil. So what we're going to do today is I've contended many times that the Patriots should trade down. Does that mean at any cost? Does that mean regardless of any situation? And Phil wants to pin me down on this, don't you, Phil?
I do, because I think there are some out there who may believe that because of your take, that the situation in New England being what it is, not being the fertile soil that it is, there might be people out there, Tom, who do believe that it's no matter what quarterback falls to you at 3, trade out. But you tell us, it's your podcast, it's your platform. Yeah. You tell us right now, what's the plan for number 3 from Tom E. Curran?
Here it is. This is less about Drake Maye, who I presume to be there at number 3, and more about the Patriots situation, the notion of trading down. You have the chance to, in this draft, fix multiple spots and add picks for next year, plus the chance to remain fluid. You cannot pass on a quarterback who lifts all boats, though, if you're sitting there at number 3. Someone who's either the total package or has a plus trait that maybe only 5 guys in the league have. That's why when I look at the run, pass, ability, and talent of Jaden Daniels, I would be more inclined to take him than to trade out, because you then have a lift all boats quarterback for a team that has run aground. But you can't draft a project onto a team in disarray, or you take a risk if you draft a project onto a bad team, because you have the anxiousness to start him. He's going to be better than Brissett pretty quickly, so he's going to be the best quarterback on your roster. You're going to have a thirsty fan base who's going to level a judgment on him pretty quickly. So you can't really draft him and sit him here because he is the better player. So that's the early part of my contention, Phil. Am I okay so far?
It's a totally reasonable take to have. I believe we just have different opinions on Drake Maye, which is fine. And
that's
Drake
what it comes down to.
Pretty polarizing guy. I think that's what it comes down to. I do see him as a lift all boats kind of player. And Jaden Daniels has plenty of ability and the ability to do that kind of thing as well. Their abilities are different. The reasons why they would lift all boats would be different. And quite frankly, your take might be considered stronger than mine, because I actually like both guys enough to draft them at 3.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I in the same way that I liked Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and Jordan Love all in 2020. And that's okay. Like, I think if you ended up with any of those guys at number 3 overall, you'd be perfectly fine. You know, I know there's plenty of takes out there. Hey, there's 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the first round. In all likelihood, they're not all going to work out. And we know that can be the case as well. 2021
it can be, but it's not a rule.
Is a great example of that.
But it's just not a rule.
It's not a rule. Agreed.
The same way it's not a rule that because Drake Maye went to North Carolina, you have to say Mitch Trubisky. The same way, you know, you roll out the Alabama quarterbacks don't work out, which they still kind of haven't, except for, you know, CJ Bryce and CJ to Mac. I mean, there's so many different guys. We still don't know if Alabama quarterbacks don't work out. Anyway, so that's my contention. It's not that he won't ever work out. And he does have the 1+ trait, I think, Phil, that could negate his lack of development, his projectness. And that is that he seems to be a plus leader. He's going to want to be here. Drake Maye, I'm talking about. He has size, which to me means he will be out there for 17 games, not as a rookie, but you're going to get 50-odd games of him on his rookie contract. You might not get that with a Jaden Daniels. He's got a very good arm. He's fast enough. But I look at the situation and I say, we just saw a guy who seemed to be a plus leader in Mac Jones. But he went from having the best coordinator in the league to literally no coordinator. And then when they brought someone in Bill O'Brien who did know what to do, the kid was already broken. You would already put him in such a bad situation that you ruined him. So if that doesn't give you pause with Drake Maye in a project developmental situation with a first-year coaching staff, I think Alex Van Pelt to be pretty good. I think he'll have a vision. I think the group together will work well. But I also thought the Patriots would be okay on offense last year. If it sucks and Drake Maye is sitting there watching a clown show, it's not going to be helpful, and you're going to waste a year of his rookie contract. So it's very much an if it's not you, it's us situation. You got a new offensive install. You got no real receivers. Tight end is still sketchy. You know, if you had actually done work in free agency, Phil, if you got Calvin Ridley, if you got Jonah Williams, if you got Tyron Smith, I would be much more inclined to say, go ahead and take Drake Maye now. You don't need the draft.
I just would look at it and say the quarterback has the ability, if he's the right guy, to make a coach look pretty good, to make a coaching staff look pretty smart, and to make some players that are thought of as less than seem to be better than that in relatively short order. Does anybody look at the situation that CJ Stroud stepped into? And he had Shaq Mason, he had Laramie Tunsil, and the offensive line there was better last year than what the Patriots appear to have right now. But nobody looked at that receiving core as being the kind of receiving core that could support a 4,000-yard season and borderline MVP campaign. Not a single person. Nico Collins? Did anybody even know who Nico Collins was? I remembered him as being the best. He was the prototypical Patriot receiver the year he came out of Michigan, because he was so big and so athletic. And it was kind of strange that he hadn't worked out to that point. Turns out they just needed a better quarterback. So if it's the right guy, he can cure a lot of the things that you're talking about. And I would say, don't suck.
Okay.
Don't fail to put a situation around the kid. That's not his fault, and that doesn't make him a bad pick. I would say just make sure you don't fall into the same sort of traps that the Patriots have fallen into in recent years. And it shouldn't be that hard, Tom. They were so catastrophically bad the last 2 years. It shouldn't be hard to right some of those wrongs in recent Patriots history here.
Here's the thing. Take a Justin Herbert, for instance. Okay, he's taken 6th overall. We did that exercise the other day with approximate values. The only guy in the top 5 who was taken really high in terms of what he's returned, what kind of player he's turned into. But even with him, he's had bad coaching. He's had talented players around him, and he still hasn't been able to get out of his own way into the playoffs. Was he 0-1 in the playoffs, I think, so far?
I think you're right.
So, and I would contend that Justin Herbert's a better player than Drake Maye, at least at this juncture. He's faster. It's a smidge bigger. I think he's got a better arm.
But nobody thought of him that way coming out. Nobody. Yeah. He was, according to Daniel Jeremiah, who I know we both respect, he was Jeremiah's 4th quarterback ranked that year in 2020 and his 22nd overall player. Daniel Jeremiah, this year with Drake Maye, has him as his 2nd quarterback and his 5th overall player. Josh Allen for Daniel Jeremiah, just another guy that not everybody was very high on, was Daniel Jeremiah's 4th quarterback in 2018 and his 16th overall player. And so Maye is, I'm just using Jeremiah because he's big draft media, right? But he's really bright. He's been in the league. We understand his scouting background. He had Josh Allen at 16 overall. He has Drake Maye at 5. Now, maybe part of the reason he has Drake Maye at 5 is because he feels like he missed to a degree on Josh Allen.
But I think
and
maybe
he's trying to make up for that. And he's saying the traits can overcome some imperfections in your game.
What if he's just not good at this? He's on a cold streak, and Drake Maye being high on his list is a bad sign because he keeps getting these big guys wrong.
Well, so to your point there, and again, that's tongue in cheek from you. We both really like Daniel Jeremiah. We think he's smart. I believe because I've seen him comment on this, that at least at one point in the pre-draft process leading up to 2017, if not by the end of it, he did not have Patrick Mahomes in his top 50. Top 50 players.
I'm sticking with Thor. I don't give a shit. I'm sticking with Thor Nystrom.
So no, but that makes your point.
Yes.
Maybe he's just, who?
I mean, it's like Bill with wide receivers.
What I would say, my argument would be in DJ's defense here. I think there has been a realization that there are certain things that might look wonky at the college level, whether it was Justin Herbert's offense or Patrick Mahomes' footwork and the defenses in the Big 12, that scouts are starting to realize, maybe Jeremiah included, if they've got the right traits to succeed in today's NFL, because it's so hard to parse college situation and project it to NFL situation, offensive line, receivers, talent, coaching, sometimes it's better not to complicate it and to look at the physical traits. And as long as the guy is smart and tough and players want to play for him, if he has those traits, you might be better off just betting that those will eventually work out. And that's sort of where I've gotten to, Tom. And the reason why I said this week, for me, Drake Maye is the best prospect at that position this year's draft. It sort of was light dawning on Marblehead here, because I just finished my prototypical Patriots thing, looking at the Ron Wolf executive tree. It's been a pretty good tree in terms of identifying quarterbacking talent, and the things that are consistent for those guys, starting with Brett Favre, working your way down in terms of the big time investments they've made at that position, are big arm, athletic, can throw off platform and create. And that to me is, and big body. I should include that. Bigger body. That to me is Drake Maye.
It's also Daniel Jones.
That's a fair point. That's a detriment. But
So
Tom, you know what's interesting about Jaden Daniels? And again, I like him.
He's not that, he's like, and this is what drives me crazy about Michael Penix. The people like, just take Penix 34. I mean, that's burning a pick in my estimation if he doesn't work out, a second round pick. And it's not just burning a pick on a random player like a Tyquan Thornton or a Cyrus Jones or something. That's burning a pick on a guy who you're going to have to invest a ton of time into to make sure he's not the correct guy. Phil, go.
It's just hard for me to look at Jaden Daniels and not think of the old, those who do not study history are destined to repeat it.
Mm-hmm. With whom?
With Daniels, in that how many quarterbacks that are built like him, Tom, have had long-term success in the NFL?
But it's a new era. That's the thing, is you weren't even looking at those guys before. So you can't say, remember X.
But it is still a physical game, as protected as quarterbacks are. It's a physical game. We just saw Anthony Richardson, who's built like a truck. Running quarterback,
You're right?
Good arm, great athlete, plays 4 games.
And that's why I argue for Maye to a degree, or that's what I allow for Maye in terms of debating whether he could be, why he would be hard to pass on. Because it's not easy. Oh, get the hell out of there. Trade down. I think it's the smartest thing to do because of the Patriots situation. But I also look at Maye as fitting the suit better than anybody and probably being more durable, more willing to play in New England than anyone else. New England is a unique place. It is a fairly entitled place at this juncture. We go on early edition and people talk about, I need a quarterback who can win a Super Bowl. Put down the crack pipe. You don't need a quarterback who can win a Super Bowl because you had one in the 60-year history of the franchise, and he did it 6 times. But you don't go looking for a quarterback who can win a Super Bowl. You find a really good quarterback and then hope the situation around him gets good enough so that the group of you, the 53 players, 45 active, the 60 on the roster in general, the coaches, everybody can win the Super Bowl, because it's not going to happen where you find one guy, oh, he's going to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't happen that way. I will say this, Phil, and I will ask you, we talked about this on Quick Slants. What takes more guts? I think if the Patriots are to trade down with Minnie, then they have 11 and 23 next year. We did all of this, but you can get wide receiver, offensive line, cornerback, even a tight end, secondary cornerback. And if you have to come up next year, you can do it. You will run the draft next year. Can you find Maye's equal next year? Well, what will Quinn Ewers be next year, for instance, for the hell of it? So I'm not promising that Drake Maye will be a bust, but you just have more chips spread around the table at more need positions. Not the most important position, but more need positions, some of which are interdependent positions, wide receiver and tackle. I just say, where is the transcendent quality for Drake Maye, the thing that he does better than everybody else. And people say, well, you're at 3. When are you ever going to be up there again? You don't know. You can be up there again because you can make trades. You can figure it out. Is it easier or safer to take the quarterback? It's easier to take the quarterback because you have to go against the grain if you're going to trade down. And you have to be willing to do all the work on May and Daniels and JJ McCarthy and Penix and Bo Nix and say, nah, you know what? None of these guys are good enough for number 3. We can do better. And then you have to trust your staff, Phil, to have found the kids at OT and wide receiver to trust their evaluation. So if you do have to take them at 11 and 23, you're stuck in those spots. You can't move, that you know that you are going to get good players and you have the coaching in-house to work at those spots. So it's easier to take Drake Maye. And then in 2 years, if he blows, just say, yeah, kind of his fault here. Because I actually just saw that movie take place here in New England. You took the quarterback because everybody said you need to take a quarterback. You included. Your owner didn't hold you at knife point and say, take a quarterback, Bill. You, as we have heard over and over again from people who are actually in the draft room, we're okay with taking Mac Jones. You weren't doing cartwheels, Bill Belichick, about Mac Jones, but you understood that was the play to make, and you made that play. So the easy thing to do is to take Drake Maye and just say, well, I won't be here anyway at the end if he sucks. Is that right? Is that the easier thing to do, Phil?
Here's what I would say is it's both the easier thing to do and the more risky thing to do. But it might be the right thing to do because he's the right guy. And so that's what I would say about him. I know you feel differently about him. If you're taking, a tackle and a receiver at 11 and 23, I mean, there are going to be some pretty good options for you, especially in this class. Now, we may look back on it 5 years from now and say, why did we think we were going to get a surefire tackle at 11 overall? How many of those have been? And I don't know what the numbers are. We could probably go back over the course of the last decade and look at guys that were taken from 8 to 15, and maybe the tackles there are phenomenal. I don't know. Usually the sure thing franchise left tackles go in the top 5 or 6 picks. But this is a deep class. So you might be able to get a great one at 11. You might be able to get a great receiver at 23. Maybe it's Olu Fashanu and A.D. Mitchell from Texas. And we just talked about Nico Collins, talk about another height, weight, speed freak. The riskier thing is taking the quarterback because it's just harder to evaluate because there's so many intangible things that are really hard to quantify that matter at that position. The one thing I would push back on a little bit, and I hadn't thought of this until you mentioned it. I think I trust their quarterback coaching more than their offensive line or their receiver coaching at this juncture.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you something about that. Go ahead.
Because Alex Van Pelt, at least we know, has worked with some great quarterbacks and has been in the league for a long time and is a really widely respected quarterbacks coach, whereas Scott Peters, the offensive line coach, very respected technician and worked under Bill Callahan, but this is his first time coaching, being the lead dog, coaching that position. And receiver, it's Tyler Hughes, who was here previously, but it's his first time leading an NFL room. And so
is he leading the room and Troy Brown is
that's
secondary?
how it seems. It seems as though he's been given that receiver coach title, and Troy's role with the team, if he's even going to be with the team, Tom, I'm not 100% on that, is unknown to me at this point.
I'm going to put that on my what to ask Mayo and Wolf list for the owners meetings.
He may be returners coach. He may be helping special teams wise. That Troy, that is. So yeah, we'll see on that front. But I've kind of left TC McCartney out of this because he is the quarterback's coach in title and he's worked with Van Pelt and he understands this offense. But I think it's going to be Van Pelt. The offensive coordinator is the guy who's working the most with the quarterback.
You got, especially the starter, and that was told to us. Who the hell said that to us? Might have been said off the cuff. It was a former player. I don't know if it was Castle or somebody. Former quarterback said the offensive coordinator has the starter. Everybody else is a quarterback's coach projection. So that'll be interesting too. You can look at Alex Van Pelt and Ben McAdoo and TJ McCartney and say, whatever, 3 Jags three coaching Jags, but the fact that you have three guys who are coaching offense, does give you a good division of power. I wonder who will be in charge of the quarterback drafted, because they're going to take a quarterback. Will that be a Ben McAdoo project, or will that be an Alex Van Pelt project? Or is Alex Van Pelt going to incorporate his time mostly into Jacoby Brissett so that we can be up and running? How is that going to be divided up? But I would say this, definitely, if you take Drake Maye at 3, Ben McAdoo and Alex Van Pelt are the most important coaches for the Patriots in 2024, and that includes Gerard Mayo. What they do and how they do their job is the most important aspect of the Patriots coaching staff, because that quarterback has to be developed so that he can make plays without a left tackle that you definitely know is going to work out, without wide receivers that you were able to bring in. I mean, the no Calvin Ridley and then no top 15 wideout aspect of this Patriots offseason puts even more on the quarterback. If you got Ridley, again, let's not oversell Calvin Ridley to the point where he's a top 10 wideout, but if you got Calvin Ridley and married him up with Bourne and Demario Douglas and KJ Osborne, I did this last year, shit. You should have an okay wide receiver core, but there's so much on the quarterback to make those guys better, and the protection. But I'd say, do you agree with that contention a little bit? That the coaching of the quarterback is, in the hierarchy of Patriots needs, quite close to number 1.
I agree wholeheartedly, because I've said the most important thing for the organization next year, even more than winning and losing games, is the care and feeding of your franchise quarterback. It's how is he developed? How is he managed? You know, I think it can look a variety of different ways. I'm not sure yet. I've been a proponent of playing the guy right away and letting him learn on the job. But if they know there's something about him where he's starting to get gun shy, and you have to somehow manage that, not great, in my opinion, not ideal. You'd rather have a guy that doesn't need that. But okay, then you know when to sit him. You know how long to sit him. You know when to put him back out there, depending on the personnel around him. All that stuff to me matters more than wins and losses, because we know right now, yes, you would like to see them compete and contend. And I think it could help generate positive momentum, not only for the players, but for the coaching staff and the front office, Tom, that is going to be looking to find a toehold in terms of what they're doing here and getting some positive feedback in terms of the results. So winning and losing matters in that regard, but it's not more important than making sure the quarterback is ready for year 2 and 3 to really help lead a contending team. That's the most important thing for this team to do. And so I'd agree with your quarterback coaching take for sure.
I'm on Boston Sports Tonight this evening. Mike Felger is a co-host along with Michael Hawley. We always send out these emails. What are we going to talk about? And our guy, Rob Snyder, who also produces Quick Slants, he's the BST producer on a night in, night out basis. He said, boy, we have pummeled so far, trading down, not trading down on the number 3 pick to a fairly well. So what do we want to talk about tonight? And here are the 3 things I wanted to talk about when we go on there. One is the what takes more balls conversation. So I threw that on the email. But also, here's 2 other items. One, I would not trade for a top end wideout. Because if I was a top end wideout, I wouldn't want to re-sign here. T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk. Though I might be somewhat forced to re-sign or negotiate an extension, because I realize the team is going to suck so bad in 2024 statistically that they're going to drive my market down. I'm going to go from being a really good 90 catch guy for 1,400 yards to a 60 catch guy for 931 yards. So I'm not going to have the same value. So it's a shotgun wedding that you're going to have to pay a guy a bounty in, pay him like he's still a top 10 receiver, and you have to give up a pick for it. So I wouldn't trade for a top end wideout. Phil?
I've started to go a little bit back and forth on this, because coming into the offseason, they had so much money that I assumed they'd be able to add a real piece to the receiving core and then draft on top of that and use that 2nd round pick, for instance, which to me has a ton of value in a deep draft at premium positions at the very top of the 2nd round. You're going to have the ability to get a really good player there.
That's
But
why,
you're
again,
you're so bereft of talent at receiver. Sorry, Tom, that would I rather draft, for example, Xavier Legette, who's a big body, looks a little bit like, in terms of his build, AJ Brown, tested actually more athletically than AJ Brown did.
Jeez.
His style of play, I've heard, is actually a little bit more reminiscent of Deebo Samuel's, where you get it to him, catch and run. He ran a 4.39 at 211 pounds, I believe it was, Tom, 221 pounds. Big boy. Again, AJ Brown. Think AJ Brown with Deebo Samuel's game. So would you rather have him, who might get to the top of the second round, or would you rather trade that pick and pay Brandon Ayuk and have a better idea of what you're going to get at the NFL level? You haven't spent the money that I thought you were going to spend, so it's just sitting there. Would you rather take the certainty in a player like Ayuk, who's still, it's not like he's the number one in San Francisco, great offense there, talk about, a situation helping a player out. He's probably been helped by that situation quite a bit. But would you rather have that certainty and trade the pick, or would you rather have the cost-effective guy for 4 years?
Then you're getting into convincing him to stay and franchising him and overpaying him for your suck tax.
So here's the thing. You can't make the trade unless you know he's going to re-sign.
Right.
So that to me is a prerequisite. If you make the trade, he is re-signing. That, in my opinion, you can't hope that you'd have to get some assurances from his agent that, yes, if you're going to be willing to pay our guy, because we don't want his numbers to sink the way you described, which I hadn't even thought of. I was assuming what you were going to say was he might feel like he has to sign the extension because he doesn't want the injury risk. He could go out and play his final year, get hurt, and then you never get the deal. But for both of those reasons, the guy's probably going to want to sign that extension. So you'd have to have that in hand first, the knowledge that he's going to resign. Then you go ahead and you make the deal.
Which gets me back to the point I'm making. Well, how are you going to get a good wide receiver otherwise? You trade down. You trade down, and now you can take one at 23 as opposed to 34. Or take one at 11. Or figure out a way to come back up after you got 11 and 23 from Marvin Harrison. And you still have next year's number one. Like, let those two teams and whoever's sitting at 5. Who is it 5?
The Chargers.
Yeah, they don't need Marvin Harrison. They probably do. All right. Here's the other thing.
Assuming you're getting a future first, which I'm still not sure they would get, but we're assuming best case return on that number 3 pick because there's a quarterback there. Here's
the other thing. I heard Felger and the big boy. Whoa, I gotta. I heard Felger and the big boy bickering on Sunday night, and let's find some of that conversation because they're both talking about, hey, let's push hot chips in the middle of the table and say how many wins they're going to have. Okay, here's that noise.
My worry now is that year one's going to be so bad that it's going to be hard. Don't you want them to win some games?
We're not going to have anything to talk about.
Well, no.
Why do you think it's going to be so bad?
It's not just that. Don't you want Mayo to have some success early and have people start believing in the program and believing you're going in the right direction? If you're so hideous and everyone gets off on such a bad start, that's going to set you back.
Mike, they re-signed the defense. They kept all of that together. They are enhancing the scheme.
They're going to suck.
They were not a 4-win team last year. They were more like a 6 or 7, but there was so much dysfunction with the coaching, the kicker, the quarterback situation. It was so dysfunctional. They weren't a 4-win team. They were better than that.
The roster's pretty bad.
And so they're keeping what works, and they are going to rebuild whatever they can. What you're talking about in the quarterback room, these guys, Wilson and Fields, I know you like to play. It's fantasy football. Let's just plug a guy in, and he just works because you like his name from the draft. You have to look at Justin Fields and Russell Wilson both need specific needs in terms of an offense and how you build it around.
The roster's pretty hideous. If you think this roster right now is a 7-win, we're going to start drug testing here.
Not today. Program. By the time they get to it. By the time they get down to it.
You're saying last year they were a 7-win team?
No, I said, that's what I picked them before the season. I'm usually pretty accurate.
They were carting out the remains of Trent Brown at left tackle. They had whatever they were.
Yeah, because they had no coaching on the offensive line. You guys are underrating the dysfunction that went on there with the coaching staff from the quarterbacks to the offensive line. They didn't even have an offensive line coach for half the season.
They smell. I'm sorry, they do.
So here's my contention. This whole feet to the fire thing, I want results and I want it now, that Mike is using as a whip to the team's hindquarters. It's nice and all, but it does not give enough credit to just how bad the Patriots are, and what a disaster that Bill Belichick left this roster in. Never mind, the coaching staff was kind of spackled together because Bill was so bad and the dysfunction was so bad in 2023 that they had to move on from him a year before they were ready. Reminder, they were the worst offense in football. The team itself was dysfunctional, the locker room included. There's no quarterback. There's no real backup quarterback, if you're going to call Jacoby Brissett the quarterback. There's no left tackle. They have no number one. They have a shaky number two. Is it Kendrick Bourne? Is it Juju? Is it KJ Osborne? Tight end is coming with an ACL-laden Hunter Henry, and it's kind of one deep behind him with Austin Hooper, who's certainly on the downwards trend. They need a second outside corner, and it's a really good division. They have another year of sucking before they're sniffing 7 wins. This is just like Bill Parcells' first year when they brought in Drew Bledsoe and won 5 games in 1993. It's even worse than Bill Belichick's first year in 2000 when he actually had a core but had a disastrous cap situation. And that team won 5 games. So you got a 5-win team for Jerod Mayo with glimmers, ideally, of hope for 2025. That's my contention. This notion that, 7 wins, they're going to be over that. Come on. Well, actually, Felger says they do suck. It's Bedard who says they're going to be a 7-win team. But, I mean, maybe I'm a sucker. Maybe I'm an easy grader. But I couldn't care less about the wins and losses in 2024. I need to see building blocks. I need to see a foundation poured and a frame going up. I don't need to see the house. How do you like that?
I would like to see more than 4 wins. Can I ask for that?
Yeah. Yes. But I don't care about the wins. You might get 3. You can't have 3.
You can't have 3 or 4. Like, Tom, if they don't upgrade the quarterback position this year, that's a
if they don't upgrade the quarterback
disaster.
If they trade down, if they trade down, Phil, and have Jacoby Brissett running around out there with a left tackle and a wide receiver, and they're not really a pain in the ass for the entire league by the end of the year, even with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, if you've staffed offensive tackle and wide receiver, which are easier positions in my estimation to get on the field and contribute as a rookie than quarterback will be, if you trade down, you're going to be a better team by the end of 2024 than you will be if you take a quarterback.
That's totally fair. But again, I don't care about 2024. So if you passed on Justin Herbert or Josh Allen so that you could be a 7-win team, that's not great process, in my opinion. It'd be better for us in the short term, but long term, oh boy, now you're looking at it and now you're hoping to get your quarterback next year. And I would say this about next year's quarterback class, and I want to leave some room for error and misunderstanding about what was actually being said at this time last year. But I believe this time last year, Tom, people already knew Caleb Williams and Drake Maye were going to be top 5 picks.
Drake Maye did have a very good 2022, didn't he?
They knew, which is not the case for quarterbacks in this coming year's draft class, 2025, outside of maybe Shedeur Sanders. I think he has that kind of respect from people. But it's
Shedeur
not.
Makes me nervous.
Well, and he's, I think, I'm sure there are people that are out there that say, no, you're all wrong on this. But Caleb Williams and Drake Maye, from before the time last college football season started, were considered top of the draft guys. There might be one player who's sort of in that same category this year, and I think it's Sanders.
Shedeur makes me nervous in that, not that I don't think he has the physical skills, but in just the absolute jailbreak situation that was going on with Colorado's offensive line once they got through the first couple of weeks and started playing some better teams. He would sprint back towards his own goal line. And that's going to be something that over the course of time, he's going to have to get to be a better stepper-upper. The other thing too, Phil, is even more so the Justin Fields argument. If you wanted to be a good team by the end of 2024, record-wise, Justin Fields, trade down and add all these other positions. And anybody who's wondering who's going to be a free agent at the end of next year, quarterback-wise, you got your Russ Wilson, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jordan Love, Sam Darnold, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Jacoby Brissett, Tua Tagovailoa, Marcus Mariota, Jarrett Stidham, Drew Lock, Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, Mike White, Jameis Winston, and Mac Jones. Okay?
Those
All
big
right.
names, some of those big names are not going to be free agents.
No, of course not. But they're slated to be free agents. As you heard me mention, the Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance combo, Justin Fields combo, all those guys. Wait a second. They must have picked up Trevor Lawrence's fifth-year option. Oh, they have until May to do that. Is that right?
Yeah, they've got some time on that.
Yeah, they'll pick up his fifth-year option if they don't have a deal done. So he'll be back there next year, as will Tonga Tagovailoa. All right. Did I say Tonga? Tua. All right. Good stuff, Phil. Let's get on out of here. I'm going to owners meetings next week, okay?
All right. Have a great time.
Will you pod with me?
Yes.
All right. See you.
Bye.